Good evening, everyone. Um, Welcome to the first Bug Bounty Meetup by Bug Hero. Um, so, as Janaka mentioned, I will briefly, I'm pretty sure most of you know about what is Bug Bounty, what does bug hunting entails, and um, uh, what does security mean. But just to give a clear picture, I will just touch upon the basics of bug hunting, and then why do we need bug hunting, and then where does bug bounty fit into the whole ecosystem of security testing. So, I'm pretty sure all of you um, have done some sort of hacking uh, in one way or another. So, but in a very high level term, hacking entails getting unauthorized access to data or system that you are not permitted to. If I am to very briefly talk about um, hacking, I think the very first instance of known hacking in history goes back to 1986 when an sort of a disgruntled HBO subscriber, when he got to know that the subscription has gone up, he hacked into the HBO channel and protested the increased hike. That was 1986. I think since then, these security incidents have gone deep and wide. It has, if you look at organizations that got affected, I think there's no major corporation, that no big organization that wasn't affected by cyber intrusion or hacking. I don't think that we can find a country that wasn't affected by the cyber intrusions as well. So it's so widespread that it has sort of coming as a norm, which it shouldn't be. But if even if you are one of the richest companies, one of the richest countries, most resourceful company or most resourceful organization with brightest engineers or anything that you would name that otherwise hint you that they can avoid hacking. It's not the case that anyone has got hacked. And then I think one of the more recent realization of web incidents is that I think all along, I think maybe until 2010 or something, that hacking didn't have a notion of a physical harm. But I think the last decade or so has shown us that it could have a real world physical harm. So for an instant, I mean, it has been shown that there are a lot of patients with pacemakers where it sort of manage your heartbeat, and then I think one of those popular TV series called Homeland, that I think back in 2011 or so, that showed that pacemakers can be hacked to sort of like do real world damage, like physical harm can actually kill a person. I mean, I'm pretty sure when Homeland was aired in this session, it was just fantasy, but it's no longer the case that it's been shown that someone using a Wi-Fi connection can actually hack into a pacemaker and then increase the heartbeat to the point that can actually kill the person. And then, repeatedly, I think since 2011, 2009, people started showing that empirical that they can actually hack into vehicles. And then with now the later versions are actually, some people are saying that it's just computer code on four wheels. There are millions of lines of code running on those cars, and then it's just a big. Now they have a bigger threat surface. So people have shown that they can remotely disable brakes, they can do so many things to moving vehicles, even moving vehicles that can actually harm humans, can do physical harm. And then another case, I think a couple of years ago, someone hacked into the Wi-Fi of an airplane, which is pretty harmless from the outset, but the reality is that the same network is actually connected to pretty sensitive sensors in the plane that can be, if someone messes with those sensor data, that can actually again cause real harm. A lot of people. So the security is no longer, a cyber worm or like a cyber virus that just harm to the computer, but it's no longer the case. It's like, that can actually do physical harm, that can actually kill people. And then the privacy, I mean, it used to be like, like a first world problem, like, why do you care about my privacy and, uh, the protection of my data, but with the advent of like, social media, and then now pretty much everything that we do in our life relies on one way or another on the technology of like any something a system rely on a system that relies on the confidentiality integrity of data. With that, everyone should worry about who is accessing our data and for what purpose. And then I think there was a number. I don't know whether we have a number right now, but back in I think 2015, there were like I think 6,000 instances of data breaches because of hacking. And then in US, in this year alone, in 2023, there are 54 separate incidents of hacking into health systems that might have affected or more than 5 million health records. We are talking about 5 million real patients that actually, either some might have lost their data, some might have, anxious who has access to their data. These are personal information, but this is happening. This is real, and then it's no longer the case that they are going after big health systems or big hospital. Now they are pretty much attacking any health system with an online interface or a connection. So, and then more scary part is that it has a huge national security implications. I think the first known case of cyber weapons was I think late 2008, 2009, the use of Stuxnet. I'm not going to go into details. I'm pretty sure most of you are aware of it. If not, search Stuxnet, and then there are really good articles on New York Times and on Wired, how it created, who created it, for what purpose. And then more recently, I think the war in Russia and Ukraine, um, between Ukraine and Russia, I think it pretty much showed that the potential of like there are army of cyber mercenaries acting on behalf of both countries. I think it has gone to a point that no one actually control what's happening and what's going on in that. So this have very bad repercussions, consequences. And then, there are a lot of instances where, there was a case that, allegedly Russia hacked into the Ukraine power grid so that millions of people didn't have power during one of the coldest nights in Ukraine. And then there were a lot of cases where, the water system in Florida was hacked. The power grid in portion of some parts of US hacked. I mean, so far, most of these cases were to show the capability of it. Like, someone actually hacked into the system. I'm sorry, not to do harm, but to sort of show that they can do it. But, imagine someone hacked into a system and then, mess with the chemical levels of water purification, and then that could have unimaginable number of, human toll on it. Like, there are millions of people drinking that water, could have, unforeseen issues. So, these cyber threats have real world security issues. And then it's no longer just a virus, as I said. Now they have real world national security complications as well. And then finally, everything that we do, everything that we sort of discuss here, eventually boil down to sort of the economic cost. What's the cost for organization? What's the cost for country? So there are a lot of cases that we saw that I think one of the most costliest um, hacks was the colonial pipeline attack. I think that was like 2 years ago. It was just a cyber attack. It was just a ransom attack. But the consequence, the real world consequences was humongous. Like there was the entire portion in US that it couldn't have oil because of the distributor was hacked. And then if you it's just one instance. There are a lot of cases with shipping companies got hacked. Food distribution centers got hacked. So there are real world economic cost, monetary cost to the cyber incident. So and then if you are to actually calculate all the like to have an idea, I think the number would be in hundreds of billions of dollars lost to economy because of these cyber incidents. So I mean, part of the reason I think that we wanted to have this meetup, and then part of the reason that we actually started Bug Zero is that um, there was this notion that until recently that cyber criminals would go after big organizations. That whole notion changed with the corona, that even small organizations are feeling the heat of these cyber intrusions. I'm pretty sure that in Sri Lanka there were a lot of known, unknown cases where organizations got hacked uh, through ransomware or other hacking incidents. And then some organizations might have paid them, some organizations might have not paid them, and actually, went through the whole mess of cleaning up. But the reality is that um, Sri Lanka can no longer sort of hide behind the wall of we are a small country, we don't have a lot of financial assets. But I think recently cyber criminals have shown that it doesn't matter. So um, before it gets too messy, given Sri Lanka is a small island with a smaller population, we don't have the same footprint as in India. Um, which in a very rare case it could be it could be sort of a good factor, because we could actually um, um, manage it. We could actually sort of get ourselves in front of ahead of all these cyber criminals and sort of help our local organizations to sort of protect themselves. Um, and then I mean uh, um, I'm a research scientist. I've looked into security and privacy issues. I've been looking into security and privacy issues for the last 10 years or so. As part of one of the research projects, and some of these research findings are published, and then some of the more recent research findings will come out soon in a couple of months. One of the cool things that we found out is during our research project is that it doesn't matter how much funding you have. I mean, we work with dozens of companies across the world. Some even have a bigger security budget than our own country's GDP. But the fact is that all of these companies have got hacked one way or another over the last few years. So there is no recipe that saying that if you have the brightest employees, if you have the brightest security engineers, you won't get hacked. That's not the case. So that is the one thing that they all sort of agreed, is that you need to have a very strong security culture, security posture in your organizations to fight them. So what does this security posture mean? It doesn't it means that good human resources, it means that having good process, but at the end of the day, it drills down to the fact, how do you manage your vulnerabilities? It doesn't matter whether you are the brightest engineer or not, the system will have vulnerabilities. That's the reality. We need to accept it. If you if you come to that point, if you come to that realization that we will have vulnerabilities in our systems, we will have active backdoors that people might sort of exploit, then only you can actually start making the real progress by testing these systems continuously. A lot of organizations around the world fell into the trap that, just because they have compliance or they have certain standards, they are safe, which is probably the biggest sort of trap, is that they have sort of a false um, a notion that, just because they sort of tick one of the requirements for compliance, now they are safe. But the companies that they so far have been able to sort of like, have a relative success, I would say, against these cyber intrusions are the companies that do continuous testing. So, for an example, um, Google, they have a huge security budget. They have, I think, hundreds, if not thousands of employees just dedicated for security. There could be cloud security, there could be, web security, mobile security. They have internal teams dedicated to certain set of a very focused, narrowed down security. But there's and then the one sort of unique thing in them is that they never stop testing. It doesn't matter whether they have the brightest and most, highest paid, highly paid engineers, they just don't stop testing. So if there is anything that we learn through our research working with these organizations, some of these organizations are the biggest tech names in the world. Some of them are like, pretty early stage startups. One differentiating factor is that you need to do testing. So talking about testing, I mean, we are bug hunt. I mean, this is a bug hunting meetup, so we all know what security means. But I just wanted to sort of like, just for the completeness, testing could involve, testing a source code, sort of auditing it, or testing a system that one deployed, or it could testing the configuration, how it configured. So there are so many different aspects that one could actually test in a live system. But um, another thing, um, since we are all interested in bug hunting, I just wanted to sort of like bring out the different security testing mechanism that's out there. I think the most sort of like a basic testing is that, I mean, probably like 2 decades ago. So, I mean, organization anyway, they were doing QA analysis, like QA testing, like, they were testing whether they have all these functionalities met, whether is it reliable, is it crashing. So the most basic form of testing an organization can do is actually, when they write unit tests, they could actually write certain security tests on it. So I would say that's like the most primitive way of testing. And then uh, I think I would say most common notion of security testing is penetration testing, also known as pen testing, where an organization could have an external entity to test their systems. And then you could use fuzzing tools to test it. There is red teaming, orange teaming, vulnerability scan, and then bug bounty. I would say the blue teaming and purple teaming is the blue teaming primarily it's about sort of like how to safeguard, how to put controls that you can actually monitor the perimeter of an organization. So if someone sort of like try to break in, they will know. So it's just a matter of you as a team figuring out how to protect the organization from cyber intrusions, and then The biggest difference between red teaming and pen testing is that pen testing is usually most about finding as many bugs as possible. They don't, I mean, in the contract, they worry about finding many bugs. The red teaming is all about, it's all about going deep, one bug, what sort of exploit a certain vulnerability will lead to into the organization. Like, they, so for an example, um, I would say a military contracting organization where they are designing sort of next gen fighter aircraft. They would employ red teaming quite oftenly just to make sure that the latest sketches on their next gen fighter is actually safe. They don't care about whether they have 1,000 vulnerabilities or not. I mean, they should, but they are more worried what will lead to if someone to exploit those vulnerabilities, what sort of access that they would gain into. So the red teaming is all about exploiting one vulnerability after the other to go deep into the networks and achieve a certain target. So I think banks that they should do red teaming pretty often, and then orange teaming is about social engineering. Like, the orange teams would go after employees, train employees on, like, they would do sort of runs across targeting internal employees, and then see who would fall into the trap of, like, clicking on scams or, like, phishing attacks, something like that. So the vulnerability scans are more like, again, automated tools, sort of like scanning the network periodically to find any known vulnerabilities. And then the bug bounty is the one that we are talking about. So as I said, the security testing has many sort of perspectives, sort of like differentiating one approach to another. As I said, uh, there are testing approaches like pen testing, that they are more worried about the breadth. They're more worried about how many vulnerabilities on the system. But there are certain cases that are actually worried about depth. That, if one to exploit one vulnerability, what sort of access that they could gain into the network, and then they would do again and again to go deep. And then there are static versus dynamic. I mean, if there are code editing tools, the code analysis tools, most of them fell into static. The dynamic ones are, when you actually run the system to sort of gain an understanding of how it works. And then there are tool-based and more human-centered. I would say pen testing are mostly tool-based. Red teaming, bug bounty, they are definitely more human-centered. And then the continuous testing, the notion of continuous testing has, I think, has a bigger emphasis recently, because of the never-ending, stream of cyber intrusions organizations, or sort of like, they were pushed to sort of they can't afford to, do testing January and then wait until May to do another testing. Um, um, because of because of the heightened threat landscape, they need to do continuous testing. So the best testing strategy is to have a combination of all those, right? I mean, it's not practical to do red teaming every week, right? So organization needs to sort of come up with a strategy to, like, how often they do red teaming, how often they do pen testing, what's the strategy for internal testing, whether they have orange team approach or no, like, what's their, I mean, there is no real benefit if you do red teaming without actually having a blue team internally. So, there are a lot of, so the best testing strategy is a combination of all of these things. Um, so so the bug bounty comes in. It's sort of accumulate all of the notions of different aspects that I mentioned. Um, it's uh, it's I mean, it's pretty much crowdsourcing, right? So all our client programs on Bug Zero, I mean, we have pretty um, uh, really good set of organizations that I have actually put their trust on bug hunters in Bug Zero. These are none of these people are internal employees. Like these are all the vulnerability reports that we have received. They've received from freelance security testers, like all of you. So it's pretty much crowdsourcing. Like it's pretty much organizations are saying that we know it's a way of saying that they value the contribution that bug hunters bring in, and then they trust them. So this trust goes both ways. So if the organizations are willing to trust the bug hunters, and the bug hunters needs to make sure that their trust is keep intact. So um, if I have to pretty briefly touch upon key ideas, um, it's I mean, the Bug Zero, we have, I think, more than 1,000 bug hunters from 40 different countries. That's a testing pool that number is unparalleled to any other testing strategy in Sri Lanka, because there's no company in Sri Lanka that can afford to have 1,000 security testers testing a given system. So so the bug hunting offers pretty unique perspective to these organizations, and then I mean, given that we have people from all around the world, it's again a pretty unique feature to bug bounty. And then another thing that we actually push through Bug Zero is that we push client organizations to get engaged with the bug hunter as soon as possible. Like as soon as they submit a report, engage them, talk to them, understand their report, and then maybe get help during the the remediation phase, trying to fix the report, and also get help from bug hunters to sort of verify the fix. Because another research that we did found that 20% of the time when organization pushed a patch to fix a vulnerability, but in turn, they've actually introduced more vulnerabilities to the system. So, it's pretty counterproductive if you are going to, introduce more vulnerabilities and while you are trying to fix it. So, we want to make sure that's not happening to our clients in Bug Zero. So, and then, I mean, I think many organizations in the US started doing this. Like they've actually used bug hunting as one of the channels for to scout talent. Like they know the bug hunting. They know who actually submitted reports, who actually helped them, who actually done the proper testing, so they could actually reach out to people to get more help. Um, would yeah, avoid this. And then there are three different programs in bug bounties. There's public program where anyone on the system will get a notification and then sort of like start testing. There are the private programs where organizations are more worried about who's testing, so they could actually send out invitations after a filtering process. And then the private event is where organization can actually invite all the bug hunters or a set of bug hunters to their premises, and then do like a hackathon, like a 48-hour, 72-hour thing where they let bug hunters to sort of like do anything that they want to sort of find vulnerabilities. I think US military is one of those entities that actually really went on to have private events annually and then really get a considerable benefit out of it. And then if I have to talk about the bug bounties in the wild, I think it's pretty dominant now. I mean, it's widespread. It's everyone. It's a new thing in Sri Lanka. I think we are happy to be the one that actually brought bug bounty into mainstream in Sri Lanka. If even though I say mainstream, it's still not. There's a very long way to go for us to actually to get organization to acknowledge the benefits of bug bounty, but we are getting there. It's a slow process, um, but we are making progress. So, but if you look at the world, I think bug bounty platforms are there in 33 different countries. There are, I think, 50 active bug bounty platforms. Bug Zero is one of them. Um, we in the region, there are, I think we are sort of late to the party, but we are making progress. But in the world, talk about any organization that you can think of, Microsoft, Google, Amazon, Facebook, even the U.S. government, U.S. military, they have a bond program. So, so this is a pretty unique opportunity for people who have learned security, who have learned these techniques by themselves. So this is a really good source of income. And then the bug bounties, the reward that you would get, is in the world is in millions of dollars. But I mean, in Sri Lanka, we are also paying a pretty considerable amount. I will get into that. But the point that I want to make here is that, it's no longer, there are people who are doing this full time. Like, this is the only thing that they do, and then they are making pretty good, income out of it. And then everyone can be a bug hunter. I mean, there was a case that, a 10-year-old boy got a reward for reporting bug in Instagram. And Jack Cable is one of those teenagers who actually, when the Pentagon, U.S. military started their vulnerability, the bug bounty program, Jack Cable, I think he was 17 or something. When he started it, he found a bunch of really critical vulnerabilities. I mean, you could imagine that, the U.S. military employed one of the, highly skilled security engineers, cybersecurity experts, but the 17-year-old boy could still find vulnerabilities. So, if they can do it, we can do it too. And then, so, there is no age limit, there is no barrier whatsoever that blocking anyone becoming a bug hunter. And then bug zero is always there, will be there, to sort of like help out, anyone who wants to learn, who wants to sort of understand what's going on. I think we've been doing that over the last months. We are not going to sort of, bring out anyone and say that, we did this to him, we did this to her. But, if you ask around, there are a lot of cases that we have helped a lot of people to become good bug hunters. And then um, these numbers are a little old, given that I couldn't update them, but I think our highest payout is 70. There are a lot of cases where we paid 75,000, but we are willing to go up to 100,000 rupees per report. I think on average that we have paid 22,000 rupees. There's a minimum of I mean, for the initial report that a bug had to submit, we actually are trying to sort of like give a higher pay regardless of the criticality, because we want to encourage them. So, yeah, I think the total payout since May is somewhere close to 2 million. And then, yeah, I think we have a lot of really big brand names with us. Helakuru Pay here, SLCert, who is responsible for the security of the government networks. And then we recently, as recent as last week, we got Janashakti on board with us. I mean, I know that in the audience there are a few other potential entities, clients that who will come on board in coming weeks. So as I said, it's still not mainstream. There are a lot of, I mean, it's a new thing in Sri Lanka. So there is hard work ahead of us. But we are slowly plowing through, making more progress. So hopefully we'll get more and more bug hunters. The companies will get more and more organizations trusting bug hunters. So this is the step, but I'm not going to get into it because I think Nipuna will sort of like do run through how to become a bug hunter. So I think this is the most important part that I want to touch upon today, because I think most of you know security probably better than most of us. And then it's I'm just sort of preaching to the choir by telling all the positives on the bug bounty. But one thing that I really do want to emphasize, which would go a long way in building a vibrant ecosystem for bug hunting, is that I mean I'm pretty sure all of you know about have worked with ChatGPT, and then now there's a big sort of like movement about talking about ethics in ChatGPT, right? There were cases where ChatGPT want to sort of like have a relationship with the person who's using ChatGPT to get answers. But security, when it's come to security, the ethics of security is even more important. So I want to emphasize that what is this responsible disclosure means, especially in bug bounty. I'm sorry. So for an example, I think I will take this particular example, where I think a few months ago there was this alleged case that a student hacked into the Department of Education to extract A-level results. I'm not going to get into whether that's right or wrong. I'm not sure whether it's. I mean, nothing until anything is proven in the court. It's you just assume everyone is innocent. So I'm not not trying to sort of like comment on it, but I'm just trying to use that particular case and explain where it could go wrong to any of us. And then what are the steps that we should do? What are the steps that we should take to sort of prevent getting into that particular point where it's too late to go back? So in responsible disclosure, whenever you do bug bounties, whenever you test a system, A, if you can, please make sure that they have a bug bounty program. If they don't have it, then you might. I mean, there is a very real chance that they can actually go after you to breaking into their system. Some organizations don't. Some organizations might actually go after you. So it's a chance. It's a probability. But regardless, when you do bug bounties, when you find a security issue, please, I don't think I can emphasize this enough. Please do not exploit that vulnerability. So in the case of the Department of Education use case, the real steps, the ideal scenario would have been that the particular alleged student, by when that student got to know about, okay, there is a security vulnerability in this particular unit, that's when that particular student should have stopped and either emailed the administrator of the DOE. If they don't reply, they should contact SLCert saying that I found this vulnerability on this website, um, you know, and this is how I did the testing. That's all they need to do. Or, I mean, they could always contact us as well, then we can try to, contact the relevant parties. But I would highly recommend anyone contacting us a cert first if they don't find a program on Bugzero. But we are also here to help. So the responsible disclosure is that when you find a security issue, do not exploit it to gain further access. Do not do that. That's that many organizations that will see that as a criminal activity. They could actually sue you. I mean, there is a web hacking clause in our legal system as well, Computer Crime Act, if I'm not mistaken. So when you find a bug, please don't exploit it. Let the organization to figure out, what's the real consequence of, having these vulnerability. Let them figure out. Do not, as a bug hunter, it's not your responsibility to figure out what would happen if someone to exploit it. If you really want to do it, please, there are certain systems that actually have staging environments. They have actually posted the endpoint for a staging environment. Then, of course, it's not real data. You can play with it as much as you want, but please do not exploit a vulnerability when you find it. It could be an access control issue that could lead to access certain files. Then report it saying that you have insufficient access control, or you have a vulnerability in the access control that I can, as a bug hunter, I could access these files, and that's it. Do not go into that folder and then try to sort of like have another layer of exploits on top of it. Don't do that. Find the vulnerability, report it, and then let the organization take care of it after that. So that's the responsible disclosure means. And then once you report it, we always encourage client organizations to sort of like, engage with the contractor as soon as possible, so that that the particular report is taken care of. But even after the organization acknowledge it and you get the reward, you do not have the right to go public with the report. It's that particular right is solely on the organization. You cannot share that you can of course share that you got reward for finding vulnerability, but you cannot say that I found this particular vulnerability on this organization publicly. But the Bug Zero has our own leaderboard, so your name will definitely go up there with the points. More vulnerabilities you find, more points you have. But as I said, um, you cannot go public. And then again, that if you don't hear anything back from the client organization, please talk to us. We'll take care of it. Again, you cannot go public and say that I reported this vulnerability, but they didn't get back. Don't do that, because as I said, there is a very long, hard road ahead of us getting bug bounty mainstream. And then one huge barrier that sort of lies in between us and then that the target of mainstreaming is the trust. So though the Sri Lankan organizations are slowly getting on board, and then they are willing to try out this new thing. And as bug hunters, as the bug hunting ecosystem, I think we owe them as much to sort of preserve that trust, to make sure that that we do in everything that we can to sort of like help the organization not ruin their image or uh, uh, the public trust. Um, yeah, I think that's it. Again, welcome to the first meetup. Hopefully, this will be the first of a long line of meetups that we are going to organize in the future. Um, as I said earlier, um, this opens up a lot of new opportunities to Sri Lankan cybersecurity enthusiasts. There is a lot of opportunity to improve, learn. We are trying hard to get this bug bounty, the notion of bug bounty as a mainstream alternative. Help us to do it, and then while doing this, while testing organizations, please be a responsible bug hunter, and then help us to get the bug bounty ecosystem as a vibrant ecosystem as any other ecosystem that we have in Sri Lanka. Thank you.